The message came through the quantum relay at 3 in the morning. Ship time. Kang Daiho was cleaning his rifle when the communication screen lit up with an urgent priority signal. He almost ignored it. Most jobs that came this late were either scams or desperate people offering terrible pay for impossible work. But the seal on the message made him pause. It was Valari, the proud lizard people who ruled half the outer rim systems. They never asked humans for help. Ever. Daiho set down his weapon and accepted the call. The hologram that appeared showed a tall Valari in military dress. His scales were deep green with gold markings that meant high rank. The alien's yellow eyes looked tired. Human mercenary Kang Daiho, the Valari said in accented standard. I am High Commander Talar Vex of the Valari Empire. We have a problem that requires your specific skills. Daiho leaned back in his chair. I'm listening. There is a creature on our homeworld. It has been killing our people for 3 months. Our best hunters cannot stop it. We have heard that humans have unusual methods for dealing with dangerous animals. The commander's voice carried shame. Asking for outside help went against everything the Valari believed. They were warriors, proud hunters who had conquered dozens of worlds. For them to call a human meant they were truly desperate. What kind of creature? Daiho asked. We call it the Shadow Maw. It is ancient, bigger than our largest war machines. It has killed 47 of our finest warriors. The commander paused. We will pay 5 million credits for its death. Daiho whistled softly. That was enough money to buy a small moon. I'll need details. Full files on this creature and your failed hunting attempts. Agreed. How soon can you reach Velos Prime? 2 weeks if I push the engines. We will send a ship to meet you at the system edge. Do not delay, human. Every day costs us more lives. The call ended, leaving Daiho alone with his thoughts. He had hunted dangerous animals across the galaxy. Giant worms on desert planets, flying predators in gas giant atmospheres, hive minds that could control entire ecosystems. But something about this job felt different. He spent the next 3 days reading everything the Valari had sent him. The Shadow Maw was indeed massive, 20 meters long with claws that could cut through steel. It had obsidian black scales and eyes that glowed in the dark. The locals said it was smart enough to set traps and patient enough to wait days for the perfect ambush. What worried Daiho was the pattern of attacks. Most dangerous animals killed when they were hungry or defending territory. The Shadow Maw seemed to be targeting specific areas. Military outposts, government buildings, places of authority. The trip to Velos Prime gave him time to think. His ship, the Soul Wind, was small but fast. He traveled alone except for his AI assistant and his small crew of 2 other humans. Park Ji-young handled communications and languages. Lee Young-woo was his tactical advisor and backup shooter. Boss, Ji-young said as they entered the Velos system. I've been analyzing the Valari language files. They have a lot of old words for the Shadow Maw creature. Most of them sound respectful, almost like they used to worship it. Interesting, Daiho muttered. He was studying star charts of the planet. Young-woo, what do you make of these attack sites? Lee Young-woo pulled up a holographic map. Red dots marked where the creature had struck. They're not random. Look at this pattern. It's moving toward something. All these attacks form a rough line across the continent. Toward what? Hard to say. The Valari files don't show anything important in that direction. Just old ruins and sealed caves. A Valari patrol ship met them at the edge of the system. The aliens were polite but clearly uncomfortable. Having humans on their homeworld was like admitting weakness. The escort captain, a young Valari named Kex Zolan, barely spoke during the journey to the planet. Velos Prime was beautiful in a harsh way. Crystal cities rose from red desert plains. The architecture was all sharp angles and gleaming surfaces. Everything looked military and efficient. But as they flew over the cities, Daiho noticed something wrong. Where is everyone? He asked. Captain Zolan's scales darkened with embarrassment. Many have moved to the inner cities, away from where the beast hunts. The spaceport was nearly empty. Only military ships and essential cargo haulers. The Valari people, so proud of their warrior culture, were hiding from a single creature. High Commander Talar Vex met them at the landing bay. Up close, he was even more impressive. 2.5 meters tall with battle scars covering his arms. His golden rank markings caught the light as he walked. Human Daiho, he said, extending a clawed hand. Welcome to our world. I wish the circumstances were better. Tell me about this creature, Daiho said as they walked through the spaceport. Your files don't explain where it came from. The commander's scales shifted color slightly. A sign of discomfort. The shadow maw has always existed on our world. Usually it sleeps for many years between appearances. But this time is different. It stays active. It hunts constantly. They reached a military briefing room filled with holographic displays, maps, weapon specifications, tactical readouts. Everything the Valari had tried against the creature. We have used plasma cannons, the commander explained. Missile strikes. Even orbital bombardment. Nothing works. The creature is too fast and too smart. It seems to know our tactics before we use them. Deho studied the battle recordings. The shadow maw moved like liquid shadow despite its size. It used the terrain perfectly and never attacked the same way twice. But what caught his attention was something else. In this recording, he said, pointing to a tactical display, the creature had a clear shot at these soldiers. Why didn't it kill them? They were unconscious from shock weapons. Perhaps it only kills active threats. Or perhaps it doesn't want to kill at all. The commander's eyes flashed yellow. It has murdered 47 of our people. All of them armed. All of them hunting it. Deho closed the display. I need to see the attack sites. And I want to talk to any locals who've seen this creature up close and survived. Impossible. The area is too dangerous, then you can find another hunter. Deho stood to leave. I don't hunt blind. The commander caught his arm. His claws were sharp, but he was careful not to cut. Very well. But you go with full military escort, no escorts. No weapons. Just me and my team. That is suicide. Deho smiled. Commander, you hired me because Valari methods don't work. Let me try human methods. Outside the briefing room, he could see the crystal spires of the city reaching toward the stars. Somewhere out there in the desert, an ancient creature was trying to tell them something. The Valari only heard the roars and saw the death. But Deho had learned long ago that the most dangerous predators often had the best reasons for their behavior. Tomorrow, he would go into the desert not as a hunter but as someone willing to listen. The real hunt was about to begin. Dawn on Valos Prime painted the desert in shades of gold and red. Deho stood on the balcony of his temporary quarters, watching the twin suns rise over the crystalline city. Below, Valari citizens moved through the streets with nervous energy. They kept looking toward the horizon where their greatest fear lived. Boss, Ji-young called from inside. I found someone you need to meet. The someone turned out to be Kim Minji, a young Valari scientist working at the Planetary Research Institute. Unlike the military officers Deho had met, her scales were bright blue-green and unmarked by battle scars. She looked nervous as she entered the room. Dr. Kim has been studying the shadow maw from a scientific perspective, Ji-young explained. Tell him what you told me. Minji's voice was soft but clear. The creature isn't hunting randomly. I've been tracking its movements for 2 months. It follows very specific paths across the desert. She activated a portable holographic projector. A map appeared showing the continent with glowing lines marking the creature's route. See these patterns? They match ancient migration routes from our historical records. Routes that were used thousands of years ago. Deho leaned forward. Migration routes for what? That's the problem. The records are incomplete. My people, we don't keep much information about the old days, before we became warriors. What do you mean? Minji's scales darkened with embarrassment. The Valari weren't always a military society. Long ago, we were different, more connected to our world. But that history was discouraged, seen as weakness. Youngwoo joined the conversation. You're saying your people deliberately forgot their own past? Not forgot. Chose to ignore it. The military leadership believes our old ways made us soft. They prefer the warrior culture that conquered the stars. Deho studied the migration map more carefully. The lines all pointed toward a mountain range in the northern desert. What's at the end of these routes? The sacred caverns. They've been sealed for over 300 years. Sealed why? Industrial expansion. The caverns contained rare minerals needed for our starships. The military decided the economic value was more important than... She paused. Then superstition. Superstition. The old Valari believed the caverns were sacred. They said ancient spirits lived there, but modern Valari don't believe in spirits. Deho felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together. Dr. Kim, do you have any recordings of the creature's vocalizations? Yes, but they're just roars and growls. Nothing meaningful. May I hear them? Minji activated another device. Deep haunting sounds filled the room. They were complex, layered with harmonics and rhythm. Deho had heard similar sounds before on other worlds. Ji-young, Run these through the translation matrix. Check for linguistic patterns. His communications officer worked for several minutes while they waited. When she looked up, her expression was excited. Boss, this isn't random noise. There are definite patterns here. Repetitive sequences, tonal variations that suggest meaning. This creature is trying to communicate. Communicate what? I need more samples to be sure, but some of these patterns sound like grieving songs or mourning rituals. Minji stared at them in shock. That's impossible. It's just an animal. Dr. Kim, Daeho said gently. What if it's not just an animal? What if it's the last of its kind trying to go home? Before Minji could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the city. Emergency lights flashed and loudspeakers crackled to life. All citizens remain indoors. Military alert level red. The creature has been spotted moving toward the eastern district. Through the window, they could see military vehicles racing through the streets. Plasma cannons were being set up on rooftops. The Volari were preparing for another battle they couldn't win. I need to see this, Daeho said, grabbing his equipment pack. Sir, that's extremely dangerous, Minji protested. Not as dangerous as letting this cycle continue. They reached the eastern district just as the first shots were fired. The Shadow Maw moved through the abandoned streets like flowing darkness. It was even more magnificent than the recordings had shown. 20 meters of perfect predator, with scales that seemed to absorb light and eyes like dying stars. But Daeho watched how it moved. The creature avoided buildings with civilians inside. When plasma bolts missed their target and threatened to hit occupied structures, the Shadow Maw deliberately drew fire away from them. It's protecting the civilians, he whispered. What? Youngwoo had his binoculars trained on the battle. Look at its movement pattern. It's trying to get past the military, not fight them. And it's making sure the weapons fire doesn't hit civilian areas. The battle lasted only minutes. The Shadow Maw disappeared into the desert as suddenly as it had appeared, leaving frustrated Volari soldiers shooting at empty air. No one had been killed, though several soldiers suffered minor injuries from their own ricocheting plasma bolts. High Commander Taylor Vex arrived in an armored transport, his scales dark with rage. 40 soldiers and we couldn't even scratch it. This creature makes fools of us all. Commander, Daeho said carefully, I'd like permission to track the creature. Alone. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. Your way isn't working. Let me try mine. What exactly is your way, human? Daeho looked toward the desert where the Shadow Maw had vanished. I'm going to try talking to it. The commander's scales shifted through several colors, ending in deep purple, which Daeho had learned meant complete disbelief. You cannot talk to a mindless beast. Commander, that creature just spent 10 minutes avoiding civilian casualties while your soldiers shot at it. Does that sound mindless to you? Later that evening, back in his quarters, Daeho met privately with Dr. Kim. She had brought more historical files, ancient texts that the military had dismissed as folklore. I've been thinking about what you said, she told him, about the creature trying to go home. These old stories, they mentioned something called the Last Singer. What's that? According to legend, when the Shadow Maws were dying out, the last one would sing the death songs of its entire species. It would carry their memories to the sacred places and sing them into the stone, so they would never be forgotten. How long ago did the Shadow Maws supposedly die out? The stories are unclear. Maybe 300 years ago, around the time the sacred caverns were sealed. Daeho felt a chill run down his spine. Dr. Kim, what if they didn't all die out? What if one survived, sleeping in some hidden place, and only recently woke up? Then it would be trying to reach the caverns to complete the death songs. And anything that stood in its way, she paused, understanding dawning in her large eyes, would be seen as preventing it from honoring its dead. They sat in silence for a moment, processing the implications. I need to get to those caverns, Daeho said finally. They're sealed with military-grade barriers, and the creature is somewhere between here and there. Then I guess I'll have to convince both the Volari and the Shadow Maw that I'm not their enemy. Outside, the twin moons of Valos Prime cast silver light across the desert. Somewhere in that vast emptiness, an ancient being carried the weight of its species' extinction. It wasn't hunting for food or territory. It was trying to go home. Tomorrow, Daeho would begin the most important hunt of his career, not to kill but to understand. The ancient temple stood half buried in the red sand, its stone walls carved with symbols that predated Volari civilization by thousands of years. Daeho knelt at the entrance, carefully placing small offerings on the worn steps, honey from Earth, dried fruits from a dozen worlds, and clean water in a simple metal bowl. He had been tracking the shadow maw for 3 days, following the creature's path across the desert. Not hunting it, but learning its routine. The beast visited certain places regularly, old ruins, dried riverbeds, stone circles that the Valeri had forgotten. Each location seemed to hold meaning. "Boss, are you sure about this?" Young Wu's voice crackled through the comm unit. His tactical advisor was positioned 2 kilometers away with long-range sensors. "The creature's moving toward your location." "That's the idea," Deho replied softly. He settled into a cross-legged position at the temple entrance, his hands empty and visible. No weapons, no threatening postures. Just a human sitting quietly in the desert sun. Dr. Kim's voice joined the conversation from the mobile research station. "The creature's vocalizations are increasing. Very complex patterns. Ji-young, are you getting this?" "Recording everything," came the reply from the soul wind. "The tonal variations are incredible. Definitely linguistic in nature." Deho closed his eyes and listened. The Shadow Maw's song echoed across the desert, rising and falling like wind through stone. It was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time, the sound of profound loneliness. The ground vibrated slightly. Footsteps, massive ones moving with surprising grace across the sand. Deho opened his eyes and felt his breath catch. The Shadow Maw stood 50 meters away, perfectly still. Up close, it was even more magnificent than he had imagined. Its obsidian scales caught the sunlight like liquid metal, the creature's eyes burning like distant stars fixed on him with unmistakable intelligence. They studied each other in silence, predator and human, each trying to understand what the other represented. The creature's head tilted slightly, a gesture so familiar that Deho almost smiled. Every intelligent species he had met made that same motion when puzzled. Slowly, carefully, Deho gestured toward the offerings he had placed. The Shadow Maw's gaze followed his movement, then returned to his face. The creature's nostrils flared, testing his scent. "Hello?" Deho said in standard, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not here to hurt you." The Shadow Maw's response was a low, harmonic rumble that seemed to come from deep within its chest. Not aggressive, more like curiosity. Deho reached into his pack and pulled out a small device, a harmonic generator that could produce a wide range of frequencies. If the creature's sounds were truly language, maybe he could attempt a response. He played back a simplified version of one of the creature's calls. The Shadow Maw's eyes widened and it took a step closer. Then it made the same sound again, but with slight variations. "Ji-young, are you getting this?" Deho sub-vocalized into his throat mic. "Got it." The creature just repeated your sound, but added what looks like grammatical modifiers. "Boss, I think it's trying to correct your pronunciation." For the next hour, they engaged in the galaxy's strangest language lesson. The Shadow Maw would make a sound. Deho would attempt to repeat it, and the creature would patiently correct him. Gradually, patterns emerged. "Dr. Kim," Deho said during a break in the lesson, "your historical files mentioned that ancient Valeri could communicate with Shadow Maws. Is there any record of how? The old texts speak of song speech and harmony words, but we assumed it was just poetic language. It's not poetry. It's literally singing to each other." The breakthrough came when Deho managed to produce a sound sequence that seemed to mean something like greeting or peaceful meeting. The Shadow Maw's entire posture changed. Its head lowered in what could only be described as a bow, and it responded with a complex melody that brought tears to Deho's eyes. "Boss," Young Wu's voice was tight with concern, "you need to see this. Valeri military vehicles approaching from the south. Full battle formation." Through his binoculars, Deho could see dust clouds on the horizon. High Commander Taler Vex had evidently decided that diplomacy was taking too long. The Shadow Maw noticed the vehicles too. Its head snapped up and a low growl rumbled from its throat. But it didn't run. Instead, it moved to position itself between Deho and the approaching threat. "It's protecting me," Deho realized aloud. The first plasma bolt streaked through the air, missing the creature by meters. The Shadow Maw roared, but it was a sound of pain and frustration rather than aggression. It began backing toward the temple ruins, still keeping Deho behind it. "All units, hold your fire," Deho shouted into his comm. "I repeat, hold your fire!" But the Valeri weren't listening to him anymore. Soldiers deployed from their vehicles, setting up heavy weapons positions. This was going to be a slaughter, unless he could stop it. Daiho stood and walked past the Shadow Maw, placing himself directly between the creature and the approaching soldiers. The beast made a concerned warbling sound, clearly confused by this behavior. "Commander Vex," Daiho called out as the Valari leader's transport came to a stop. "Call off your soldiers." The High Commander emerged from his vehicle, scales dark with anger. "Human, step away from that monster immediately." "It's not a monster. It's intelligent. We've been communicating." "Impossible! Stand down or we will fire through you." The Shadow Maw moved up beside Daiho, its massive head lowering to his shoulder level. The creature made a soft, questioning sound. "Trust me," Daiho whispered, though he wasn't sure if the creature could understand Standard yet. Then something extraordinary happened. The Shadow Maw began to sing. Not the harsh roars the Valari had heard in battle, but something hauntingly beautiful. A melody that seemed to capture all the sadness and longing in the universe. The Valari soldiers hesitated, their weapons lowering slightly. Even through their military conditioning, they could hear something in that song that spoke to ancient memories. "Dr. Kim," Daiho said urgently into his comm, "tell them what that song means. You've studied the old texts." Kim's voice came over the general frequency, reaching all the Valari soldiers. "It's a death song. A mourning ritual. The creature is singing for its lost people." Commander Vex's scales shifted color rapidly. "It doesn't matter what it's doing. It has killed our people." "Only those who attacked it first," Daiho replied. "Commander, this creature isn't your enemy. It's trying to go home, to honor its dead, just like Valari warriors honor their fallen." The standoff continued for long minutes. Soldiers with weapons trained on an ancient being that sang of loss and longing, a human standing between them, trying to bridge a gap that had existed for centuries. Finally, the Shadow Maw's song faded to silence. The creature looked at Daiho with those star-bright eyes, then made a decision that surprised everyone. It lay down, completely, submissively, exposing its vulnerable throat to the Valari weapons. "A gesture of absolute trust. What is it doing?" Commander Vex demanded. "It's surrendering," Daiho said softly. "It's placing its life in our hands." The desert fell silent except for the wind moving through the ruins. A moment balanced on the edge of tragedy or understanding. "Sir," one of the younger Valari soldiers said hesitantly, "that song, my grandmother used to sing something like that when she remembered the old stories." Commander Vex turned sharply to face the soldier. "Corporal Jex, you will remain silent." But the damage was done. Other soldiers began murmuring among themselves. The creature's song had awakened something they thought they had forgotten. Daiho knelt beside the Shadow Maw's great head. The creature's eyes met his, full of hope and ancient wisdom. "We're going to figure this out," he promised, both to the creature and to himself. "All of us together." The real conversation was just beginning. The camp was unlike anything the Valari had ever seen. Instead of military barriers and weapon emplacements, Daiho had created a neutral space where human, Valari, and Shadow Maw could coexist. The creature rested in the shade of ancient ruins, while researchers set up equipment nearby. Daiho had named the Shadow Maw Biol, after watching how its scales shimmered like starlight in the darkness. The creature seemed to approve of the name, responding with a pleased harmonic whenever it was used. "The translation matrix is getting more accurate," Jiyoung reported from her portable workstation. "Biol's language has over 300 distinct tonal variations. It's incredibly sophisticated." Dr. Kim sat nearby, surrounded by historical texts and recording devices. She had become fascinated by the linguistic discoveries. "Some of these sound patterns match fragments in our oldest archives, songs my great-grandmother's generation knew." Biol lifted its massive head and made a complex series of sounds. The translation program worked for several seconds before producing text on the screen. "Songkeeper remembers the before time, when sky children danced with earth singers." "Sky children," Daiho mused. "That might be what they called your people originally." "And earth singers would be the Shadow Maws," Kim added. "The texts speak of a time when both species lived in harmony." Commander Vex's transport arrived just as the afternoon suns were setting. The High Commander emerged with his usual military escort, but Daiho noticed the soldiers kept their weapons lowered. Word of the creature's peaceful behavior had spread. "Human Daiho," the commander said formally, "I have received concerning reports. You have established an unauthorized research station in a combat zone." I've established a place where we can learn the truth, Deho replied calmly. Biol has been sharing stories. Stories your people need to hear. Stories from a beast that has killed our warriors. Biol's head turned toward the commander, and the creature made a sound that the translator rendered as sorrow deep. For the sky children who walk the warpath, but defend song was necessary. It's apologizing, Kim said in amazement. The creature is expressing regret for the deaths. Commander Vex's scales shifted to confused purple. Machines can be programmed to say anything. It's not a machine, Deho said. Show him, Biol. The Shadow Maw rose gracefully and moved to an open area near the ruins. It began to sing, but this time the melody was accompanied by movements, flowing, ritualistic gestures that seemed to paint pictures in the air. As the creature sang and moved, holographic images began to appear around it. Not technological projections, but something else entirely. Bioluminescent crystals in the creature's scales were reacting to its emotional state, creating visual representations of its memories. The images showed Valos Prime as it had been millennia ago. Lush valleys filled with crystal formations, graceful reptilian beings working alongside massive, elegant creatures, Valerie and Shadow Maws building cities together, their combined efforts creating wonders that surpassed anything either species could achieve alone. Impossible, Commander Vex whispered. The images shifted, showing the gradual change. Wars with other worlds. The Valari becoming more militaristic. The decision to seal the sacred places for industrial mining. The last Shadow Maws retreating into deep caves as their world transformed around them. Finally, the vision showed Biol alone, awakening after centuries of dormancy to find its world changed beyond recognition. Its journey across the desert, desperately seeking the burial grounds of its people so it could sing the final death songs. All this time, Kim breathed. We thought we were protecting ourselves from a monster, but we were the ones who destroyed its world. Young Captain Kex Zolan, who had remained silent during the display, stepped forward. Hi, Commander. My grandmother told stories like this. Before the military schools taught us they were primitive nonsense. Captain, you will not. Sir, with respect, what if the stories were true? What if we lost something important when we sealed those caves? Biol's song faded, and the bioluminescent images disappeared. The creature looked exhausted from the effort, but its star-bright eyes fixed hopefully on the gathered Valari. Dr. Kim, Deho said, show them the recordings you found in the sealed archives. Kim activated her portable display, showing ancient Valari texts that had been buried for centuries. These are song maps, navigation guides written in the old harmonic language. They show the location of every sacred site on our world. She overlaid the modern planetary map. The sealed cave systems formed a complex network spanning the entire continent. It's not just burial grounds, it's a whole ecosystem. The Shadow Maws weren't just visitors to these places, they were the caretakers. Caretakers of what? Commander Vex demanded. The planetary memory system, Kim said, her voice filled with awe. The crystal formations in those caves aren't just minerals. They're biological computers. Living repositories that store the genetic and cultural history of every species that ever lived on Valos Prime. Biol made an urgent sound, and the translator rendered it as memory crystals failing, songs growing quiet, much knowledge already lost to silence. The mining, Deho realized. When you broke into the caves, you damaged the system, and without the Shadow Maws to maintain it, the knowledge is degrading, Kim added. We're losing thousands of years of history. The implications hit them all at once. The Valari hadn't just sealed away their past. They had been slowly destroying it for 3 centuries. Commander Vex was quiet for a long moment, his scales cycling through complex color patterns. Finally, he spoke. Even if this is true, what would you have us do? Our entire civilization is built on the resources from those caves. Not all of them, Deho said. Biol only needs access to the central chamber, the heart of songs. The rest can remain industrial sites. Impossible. The military council will never approve opening any sealed areas. That's when Youngwoo's voice crackled over the comm. Boss, we've got company. Multiple Valari military transports approaching fast, full combat configuration. Through binoculars, they could see the dust clouds approaching, a full battalion by the looks of it. "I didn't authorize this," Commander Vex said, his voice tight with concern. "Then who did?" The answer came over the general military frequency, a younger Valari voice full of anger and pride. "This is Captain Kex Zolan of the Elite Guard. I'm taking command of this operation under emergency protocols." "Wait," Commander Vex said. "That's my nephew, but he's here with us." The captain standing beside them looked as confused as everyone else. "Sir, that's not me speaking." "My cousin," the real Captain Zolan said grimly. "Kex Jolan. He's always believed the military has become too soft." The approaching vehicles opened fire while still at long range. Plasma bolts seared the air around the camp. Biol roared in alarm and pain as one bolt grazed its flank, leaving a black burn mark on the starlight scales. "They're not just trying to kill Biol," Deho realized as he watched the firing pattern. "They're aiming at all of us." The rogue Valari unit had decided that anyone who would talk to the Shadow Maw was a traitor to their species. "Sir, the real," Captain Zolan said to his uncle, "we need to get everyone to safety." "There is no safety," Commander Vex replied, watching the approaching vehicles. "My nephew has brought enough firepower to level this entire region." Biol struggled to its feet despite its injury. The creature positioned itself protectively over the camp, spreading its massive wings to shield the vulnerable researchers below. "It's going to get itself killed protecting us," Kim said, tears running down her scaled cheeks. That's when Deho made his decision. He grabbed the translation device and began broadcasting on all Valari military frequencies. "This is Kang Deho speaking to all Valari forces. What you're about to destroy isn't just a creature, it's the living memory of your world. Before you fire, listen to what your own planet is trying to tell you." He activated Biol's recorded songs and broadcast them across every communication channel. Ancient melodies filled the airwaves, carrying the weight of millennia and the heartbreak of a species on the edge of extinction. The approaching vehicles slowed, then stopped. Even the most militant Valari couldn't ignore the profound sadness and beauty in those songs. In the sudden silence, Deho could hear something else. Other voices joining Biol's song. Faint and distant, but unmistakable. The memory crystals in the sealed caves were responding to their keeper's call. The sound came from deep underground, rising through stone and crystal like the voice of the planet itself. Ancient harmonies that had been silent for centuries suddenly awakened, responding to Biol's desperate call. Across the desert, sealed cave entrances began to glow with soft pulsing light. "The memory crystals," Dr. Kim whispered in amazement. "They're all connected. Biol's song is activating the entire network." The attacking Valari vehicles had stopped completely now. Soldiers emerged from their transports, weapons forgotten as they stared at the lights appearing across the landscape. Some of the older warriors were kneeling, their scales shifting to colors that spoke of deep emotional response. "My grandmother's song," one soldier said over the open comm channel. "That's the melody she hummed when I was young." Captain Kex Jolan's voice cut across the frequency, harsh with denial. "Don't listen to that noise. It's just animal sounds and cave acoustics. Resume the attack." But his soldiers weren't moving. The songs rising from the planet carried memories that went deeper than military training. Ancestral knowledge that had been buried but never truly forgotten. Biol lifted its wounded head and sang louder, its voice joining the chorus from below. The creature's scales blazed with bioluminescent patterns, creating a light show that painted the desert in shifting colors. "Jiyung," Deho called to his communications officer, "can you boost the translation matrix? I want every Valari on the planet to understand what they're hearing." "Already working on it, boss," tapping into their planetary communication grid now. Moments later, subtitles began appearing on every screen across Velos Prime. In the cities, in the spaceports, in military command centers, the ancient songs were being translated for the first time in centuries. The stories they told were devastating in their beauty, tales of harmony between species, of scientific discoveries made through cooperation, of art and music created through the joining of reptilian precision and Shadow Maw emotional depth. The golden age of Velos Prime, when two different forms of intelligence worked together to create wonders. But the songs also told of the gradual decline. Fear of other worlds leading to militarization, the decision to value strength over wisdom, the sealing of the sacred places in favor of industrial expansion. And finally, the great silence when the last shadow maws retreated into the deep caves to sleep away the end of their world. Citizens of Valos Prime, Elder Kanjil's voice suddenly filled the communication channels. The ancient council member's words carried the authority of age and wisdom. I have heard these songs before, in the depths of my memory, passed down through generations of females who refused to let them die. These are our true songs, our real history. Commander Vex stood beside Biol, his military bearing softened by wonder. Elder Gilles, the military council will not accept. The military council has led us to glory among the stars, the elder replied. But at the cost of our souls. We became so focused on conquest that we forgot why our world was worth defending. Young Captain Jolin's voice came over the comm again, but now it was shaky with uncertainty. Elder, these are just pretty stories. We can't run an empire on mythology. And yet, Elder Gilles said gently, our empire has brought us to the point where we cower in our cities, afraid of a single creature that only wants to go home. The underground chorus was growing stronger. Crystal formations across the continent pulsed in rhythm with Biol's song. And something else was happening. The planet's ecosystem was responding. Dried riverbeds began to show traces of moisture. Withered vegetation started to show new growth. The memory crystals weren't just storing information. They were part of Valos Prime's biological systems. Dr. Kim, Deho said urgently, what happens to a planet when you remove its memory keepers? Kim was frantically checking her readings. Ecological collapse. Gradual at first, then accelerating. The Shadow Maws weren't just caretakers of information. They were integral to the planet's health. How long does Valos Prime have? Based on these readings, maybe 50 years before the ecosystem fails completely. The implications hit everyone at once. The Valari had built their empire by slowly killing their homeworld. Citizens, Elder Gilles' voice carried new urgency. We face a choice. Continue on our current path and watch our world die, or listen to what our planet is trying to tell us. Captain Jolin's response was bitter. You're asking us to abandon everything we've built. Our military might, our conquests, our pride. I'm asking you to remember what made us worth conquering for, the elder replied. Biol struggled to its feet despite its injuries. The creature looked directly at the hostile Valari forces, then did something that shocked everyone. It began walking toward them, making sounds that the translator rendered as forgiveness offered, understanding sought, harmony possible. It's surrendering again, Commander Vex said. But this time to everyone. Captain Jolin emerged from his command vehicle, weapon drawn but not aimed. Face to face with the massive Shadow Maw, he looked very young and very uncertain. You killed our people, he said. Biol's response was gentle but clear. Defense necessary, but sorrow deep for all sky children lost. Ancient bond broken, all people suffer. What does it want from us? Partnership restoration, memory singing together, world healing for all children. Dr. Kim stepped forward, her voice carrying scientific authority. Captain, the creature is offering to teach us. The memory crystals contain solutions to problems we don't even know we have yet. Medical knowledge, environmental management, technologies based on biological harmony rather than industrial force. And all we have to do is give up being warriors? No, Deho said firmly. You can still be warriors, but you can also be something more. Elder Gilles' transport arrived at the site. The ancient Valerie moved slowly but with dignity toward Biol. To everyone's amazement, she began singing in the old language, her voice cracked but sure. Biol's response was immediate and joyful. The creature lowered its great head to Elder Gilles' level and they sang together. Two voices separated by centuries of silence finally reunited. My grandmother taught me that song, the elder explained to the watching crowd. She said it was for greeting the Earth Singers. I never understood what it meant until now. Captain Jolin lowered his weapon completely. Elder, if we do this, if we open the caves and restore the old ways, what happens to our military? Our position in the galaxy? We become stronger, Deho said. Not through conquest, but through knowledge. Imagine what your people could accomplish with thousands of years of stored wisdom. The galaxy already fears the Valari military, Elder Gilles added. How much more would they respect the Valari who solved ecological collapse? Who bridged the gap between species? Who turned their homeworld into a paradise instead of a fortress? The underground chorus was reaching a crescendo. Across Velos Prime, ancient systems were coming online. Climate control networks that had been dormant for centuries. Biological processors that could clean water and air. Technology so advanced they seemed like magic. "Boss," Youngwoo's voice came over the comm. "I'm reading massive changes across the planet. It's like the whole world is waking up." Biol lifted its voice in a new song. Not mourning this time, but celebration. The translator worked to keep up. Hope rising, a partnership beginning. Future bright for all children of sky and earth. One by one, the Valari soldiers began laying down their weapons. Not in surrender, but in acceptance. They were still warriors, but now they had something greater to fight for than conquest. Captain Jolan was the last to set aside his weapon. "If we're going to do this," he said to Biol, "you'll need to teach us everything. How to tend the crystals, how to read the old songs, how to heal what we've damaged." Biol's response was a sound of pure joy. 6 months later, Deho sat in the sacred caverns watching young Valari learn ancient songs from their planet's last shadow maw. The caves had been reopened and transformed into centers of learning. The crystal memory systems hummed with renewed activity, sharing knowledge that had been locked away for centuries. Dr. Kim approached with her latest report. "The ecosystem is stabilizing faster than we hoped. And Biol isn't the last shadow maw after all. The crystals have awakened 3 others from deep hibernation." Through the cavern entrance, Deho could see the new Velos Prime taking shape. Crystal cities that grew instead of being built. Rivers running clean again. Gardens where there had been industrial wasteland. The Valari were still warriors, but they had become something more. Guardians of a living world, partners in a harmony that had been broken but not destroyed. "You know," Ji-young said, joining them at the cavern mouth, "this might be the first time humans have made the galaxy more peaceful instead of more chaotic." Deho smiled, watching Biol teach a group of Valari children how to sing to the crystals. The ancient creature's scales shimmered with contentment, its star-bright eyes full of hope for the future. "Sometimes," he said, "the best hunt is the one where nobody gets killed." In the distance, other worlds had begun sending delegations to learn from the Valari's transformation. The galaxy was watching, wondering what other ancient wisdoms might be sleeping in forgotten places, waiting for someone willing to listen instead of conquer. The real hunt was just beginning. Not for prey, but for understanding.